Can the carnivore diet really make a difference for Sjogren's syndrome? And how can you get the best results? In this video, I'll explain everything you need to know about the carnivore diet's role in managing Sjogren's syndrome and how it compares to other dietary plans, and go over some common pitfalls. We'll also provide guidance on tracking your progress and seeing some real results. Hi, I'm Dr. Dasari, a surgeon dedicated to reducing inflammation caused by gut microbiome imbalances. I myself struggled with digestive dysfunction and autoimmune inflammation in my early 20s and successfully put together a methodology that works not only on me, but also my patients. My method is called the Mind-Gut Immunity Approach and has resulted in thousands of successes over the years. If you or someone you know struggles with Sjogren's syndrome and wants to rid themselves of inflammation for good, check out our website, mgiclinic.com, and schedule a discovery call with me. I'll walk you through some practical steps for Sjogren's syndrome recovery and how to achieve lasting results in just 6 weeks. All right, let's dive in. There are studies that support the carnivore diet for managing Sjogren's syndrome, but on the other hand, there's also research pointing to the opposite direction, with some linking the carnivore diet to the development of Sjogren's syndrome. So with this conflicting information, how do we find out what actually works for Sjogren's syndrome? As I covered in my other video, Ideal Diet for Sjogren's syndrome, I'm a big supporter of creating personalized, phytonutrient-rich diet plans, and I use 4 key criteria when deciding whether a diet will actually work for someone with Sjogren's syndrome. And here's a quick recap of those 4 criteria. Number 1 is phytonutrients, number 2 is macronutrient requirements, number 3 is microbiome specificity, and number 4 is food sensitivity. For a detailed explanation, check out the Ideal Diet for Sjogren's syndrome video, but I'll summarize it briefly here also. So now let's take a look at how the carnivore diet stacks up against other diets, like the Phyto-diet that I usually recommend for Sjogren's syndrome. Just to review, the harmful bacteria and fungus in your intestine thrive on carbohydrates like sugar, starches, and fiber, which causes bloating, gas, and inflammation. This inflammation travels to the salivary glands in your eyes, causing inflammation in Sjogren's syndrome. When we examine why the carnivore diet sometimes helps with Sjogren's symptoms, is because it completely removes carbs from the equation, cutting down the source of the inflammation. The carnivore diet for Sjogren's syndrome is based entirely on animal foods, cutting out fiber, carbohydrates, and incorporating electrolytes to maintain balance. By eliminating all carbs, including fiber, lactose, starches, and sugars, the carnivore diet for Sjogren's cuts off the food supply for harmful gut bacteria and fungus. Unlike keto or low-carb diets, which still include small amounts of carbohydrates, the carnivore diet completely removes them and provides calories through fats and proteins instead. This is why some people with Sjogren's syndrome use the carnivore diet as a short-term solution, especially when the other diets haven't worked. But let's review those 4 criteria I mentioned earlier. While no carbs means bad bacteria are not being fed, it doesn't necessarily address the long-term balance of your gut microbiome. Let's start with the first criteria, phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are plant-based micronutrients known for the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, which can be incredibly beneficial for managing autoimmune conditions like Sjogren's syndrome. They can help reduce inflammation throughout the body, starting with the gut. Here's a 2021 study that reviews the potential benefits of using natural bioactive compounds such as polyphenols to alleviate dry eye and dry mouth symptoms in Sjogren's syndrome. Another 2021 study explores the therapeutic effects of green tea polyphenol on salivary gland dysfunction in Sjogren's syndrome. Phytonutrients are divided into several categories such as polyphenols, terpenes, thiocyanate, fiber, resistant starches, omega fats, and alkaloids. These nutrients are essential for fighting inflammation and promoting better gut health. A strict carnivore diet, however, doesn't provide phytonutrients. But if you're set on trying a carnivore diet for Sjogren's, you can still get phytonutrients through herbal teas, which don't add carbs, fiber, or sugar. Herbal teas is a quick way to stick with a carnivore plan while still getting those essential critical nutrients. There are also diets that are sort of related to carnivore, like paleo, keto, and low carb, that do include phytonutrients. So if that's something you want to benefit from, these diets are worth considering. Just keep in mind that with a strict carnivore diet, you'll miss out on the phytonutrients and their anti-inflammatory effects, which can be important for managing Sjogren's syndrome. Next, let's talk about macronutrient requirements. The carnivore diet for Sjogren's syndrome does a solid job in terms of macronutrient needs. Macronutrients include carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. By entering your height, weight, and activity level into a calculator available on my website, you can get a good idea of what your macronutrient requirements are. With the carnivore diet, you'll need to make some adjustment to the values, like increasing your fat and protein intake while reducing your carbs. In general, a Sjogren's diet that gets half of its calories from fat is normally a good thing. Although I don't particularly like the saturated fats in meats, which are associated with certain inflammatory processes. I also don't like the animal-based cholesterol in the meat, which can allow for increases in arachidonic acid in the body. And I describe both of these pathways of Sjogren's inflammation in some of my other videos on my channel. So if you need a refresher, feel free to take a look at those videos. When I design diets for my clients, they are generally lower in carb anyways, for obvious reasons. And most of the fats come from plant-based omega sources, so you don't have these problems. From a macronutrient perspective, the carnivore diet for Sjogren's syndrome works really well, but the concerns about the fats and the cholesterol shouldn't be ignored. Next, let's talk about microbiome specificity. Now let's revisit this equation. You have bad bacteria and fungus which feed on carbs, leading to Sjogren's inflammation. While the carnivore diet removes carbs, does it actually promote the growth of good bacteria? The answer is a firm no. I know some people might find this controversial because there are people on YouTube who argue that gut microbiome diversity is actually good for people following the carnivore diet. You'll even find entire Reddit threads discussing this, but from a practical standpoint, after reviewing hundreds if not thousands of stool studies, I've never seen a healthy microbiome in someone following the carnivore diet. Sjogren's syndrome often involves inflammation driven by gut microbiome dysfunction because 80% of the immune system is in the gut. That's why in our program, when we enroll patients, we begin with a patented probiotic from Japan to recalibrate the gut microbiome and push out harmful bacteria. But how do we promote the growth of good bacteria? It's not by avoiding carbs, it's by carefully selecting specific phytonutrients. And that's where the mind-gut immunity method excels. We design a diet to promote the growth of beneficial bacteria, which lay down a competitive biofilm, pushing out harmful bacteria and fungus. Over the course of several weeks, this process reduces the production of pro-inflammatory markers like TNF-alpha and interleukin-6. The problem with the carnivore diet for Sjogren's syndrome is that it doesn't address the underlying issue. Temporarily, you don't feed the bad bacteria by cutting out the carbs, but as soon as you reintroduce fiber, starches, or sugar, your symptoms return. And I've seen this happen again and again. People fail the carnivore diet because it's not sustainable long-term strategy. Once carbs are reintroduced, the symptoms come back because the gut microbiome dysfunction hasn't been fixed. In contrast, the Phyto-diet for Sjogren's actually solves the underlying gut microbiome problems that are related to Sjogren's syndrome. Long term, this allows for more dietary flexibility, even allowing for cheat meals without triggering symptoms. I typically teach my clients how to cheat and how to incorporate cheat meals by the second or third month of the program, once we've mostly resolved the underlying gut issues. While the carnivore diet can help during flare-ups, it's not a good long-term strategy compared to customized Phyto-diets we designed for our Sjogren's clients. I've had many discovery calls with people who have tried the carnivore diet for Sjogren's syndrome and didn't find success. They often tell me they got temporary relief or their symptoms came right back once they started eating carbs again, and this is a common story. I hope that this honest review helps you figure out if the carnivore diet is the right choice for managing Sjogren's syndrome. While it can produce short-term relief, addressing the gut microbiome is key to long-term success. Okay, so now let's discuss the final criteria, food sensitivities in Sjogren's syndrome. Food sensitivities play a major role in managing Sjogren's syndrome. In my discussions, I talk about 4 primary food sensitivity tests that are available: the skin prick test, the IgE blood test, the IgG4 blood test, and the newer mediator release blood test. For a deeper look into these tests, feel free to check out my other video on food sensitivity testing for Sjogren's syndrome. Now, regarding the carnivore diet, there's an issue of complex proteins, something I've discussed in previous talks. You basically ingest large amounts of protein, which are broken down in the stomach and upper intestines by proteases. These proteases break down the protein into individual amino acids, which are then absorbed into the bloodstream. But sometimes these proteins do not completely break down and form small peptide chains, which can cause really bad inflammation. We see this in various types of complex proteins, especially ones that are animal-derived. This means that there's a high likelihood of developing sensitivity to one or more types of meat or even eggs, and this makes the carnivore diet a risky strategy for managing Sjogren's syndrome, as it significantly limits your food choices and increases the chances of food sensitivities. Alright, that's my talk. In the comments below, tell me your experience with Sjogren's syndrome, with carnivore diet types, and what's worked for you and what didn't. I'm curious to hear about your experiences. As you know, I've had great success using the mind-gut immunity method in my clients, and I'm a strong supporter of customized phyto-diets and focused gut microbiome recalibration for Sjogren's syndrome to achieve lasting success. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content such as this. As always, this is Dr. Dasari with the Mind-Gut Immunity Clinic, and I'll see you next time.